Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis got some juice this week. Fired up. Bill's just back from a lovely trip. Refreshed, reinvigorated. Yes.
Yeah. I feel good. It's interesting that how less invigorating and refreshing a vacation becomes when you do it with a 1-year-old. But it was still good.
I love your parenthood stories. Oh man. So we have 6 Northern Spring games to talk about. We're going to do Oregon, Nebraska, Maryland, Colorado, West Virginia, and Rutgers in that order. And then we're also going to mock me about the NFL draft, because as the NFL draft was going on, I was tracking the picks, North versus South versus border/California, in a way that nobody else in the world was doing. And I was like sitting in my little office, pumping my fists whenever it was like, yes, Utah State. Yes, that's a huge pick for the North. And the thing about statistics, Bill, is you find this in sports writing, is you can't manipulate statistics, but you can choose when to use them to boost your point or when to ignore them if they take away from your point. So I was ready to use NFL draft statistics to boost a particular point about the North versus the South. And then it didn't happen. And we are going to talk about the stats anyway, because I don't want to hide, because I want to be transparent and tell you what I thought was happening, and then tell you instead what is actually happening when it comes to the North versus the South in the draft. But we're going to start with spring games first, and we're going to start with the Oregon Ducks. This was on the Pac-12 network. I had to get a free trial of, I don't know what, something, so I could watch it. They continue to promote the Pac-12 network in a way that it's a little bit sad. It was weird. The Pac-12 network had a bunch of spring games this weekend and has had them this spring, while simultaneously the Big Ten network was running a draft tracker on all its spring games this weekend, Bill, of all the Big Ten draft picks. And it was like Oregon, Bo Nix. And it's like, okay, the Big Ten is like, we're taking the Pac-12 guys, right? Those 4 teams, we're taking them already. Oh, Big Ten has the number 1 pick in the draft in Caleb Williams. While the Pac-12 is still like, we exist. We still exist for a week or whatever it is. So it was little, but they had a great broadcast for the Oregon game. And my overall takeaway, Bill, we'll do 3 takeaways from each spring game, is I can't wait to see the Oregon offense versus the Ohio State defense in October. Yeah. That was my number 1 thing.
Yeah. It's like, do you think Oregon's going to have like the most like kind of like, I don't know what the right word for it, like electric offense in the country? Just like kind of zipping the ball all over the place. And like they were that way last year too, but it's like there's a lot of speed, a lot of quick stuff, and like, but explosiveness that comes with it. And it's just like, yeah, I want to see that against what probably, I think in my mind right now, will be the best defense in the country at Ohio State. Like that's going to be the one that I think everyone's circling.
It's not odd. It's a tribute to Oregon, because they lost their number 1 running back in Bucky Irving, who got drafted. They lost their number 1 receiver in Troy Franklin, who got drafted. And they lost their quarterback, Bo Nix, to the first round. And it's like, we're good. And they kept talking. And listen, every broadcast is a home team broadcast. So I heard this weekend, both Oregon and Maryland claim to have like the best skill position players in America. And it's like, okay, well, it can't all be true. But Oregon, the Oregon broadcast, after talking to the coach, it was discussing, does Oregon have the best quarterback room in the country, the best receiver room in the country? So let's start with the quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel, the starter from Oklahoma, 14 of 21 for 163 yards. And then the 2 backups, Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, both second-year guys. Dante Moore coming back from UCLA. Austin Novosad's been there. 11 for 16 for 87 yards for Dante Moore, 12 of 22 for 177 for Austin Novosad. I thought Austin Novosad looked good. And it feels like there's a battle there, that it's not a sure thing that Dante Moore is necessarily going to be the backup this year. I even wonder for the future who that guy's going to be down the line. There's certainly different kind of quarterbacks, but I thought there was some depth to the quarterback room in an interesting way that matters. And again, a lot of it is talking about, maybe we talked about it with Notre Dame earlier, when you saw what CJ Carr was, are they going to get off the transfer portal bandwagon and finding starting quarterbacks? When you see what Austin Novosad and Dante Moore, even though Dante Moore is a transfer, he's not an old transfer like Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix were, established starter, different kind of thing. Will they get off the transfer bandwagon? I did like the depth of the Oregon quarterback situation.
I actually forgot that Austin Novosad was there.
Yeah.
But he's a player that I followed somewhat closely because Ohio State was like pretty heavy on him for a while. Ohio State went through like the weird thing with its 2023 quarterback cycle, not really knowing who it was going to take or who it wanted. But at one point, it looked like Austin Novosad was going to be that guy, and he camped here. And like I talked to him a little bit. Like, good kid, good player, and I think you're like, obviously he doesn't have the same recruiting pedigree as Dante Moore, but like if that's your third guy, or like if the competition for your future is between Austin Novosad and Dante Moore, like yeah, you're set up pretty well. I think like quarterback depth is hard to come by. Oregon seems like it has it, like, and you know it's hard to keep too, I guess. So we'll see what transpires here as things develop more. But I would feel pretty good about it. Yeah, it's an odd thing that they were able to get Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore, but if Dylan Gabriel is like your bridge to finally get off the quarterback transfer thing, it seems like Oregon set up pretty well for the future to build on top of Dante Moore and or Austin Novosad and kind of build it more through high school recruiting moving forward.
I did feel like the Dylan Gabriel, who's clearly the starter, Bo Nix thing, it just feels like they put a mirror on the offense and now it's left-handed instead of right-handed. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know, is that the same guy? I think Gabriel probably moves a little better in the run game, and it's interesting that Troy Franklin was kind of their more down the field guy. So and Bo Nix still had like I've talked about a million times, a super low average depth of target last year because just not what they want to do. I don't know that I would view Dylan Gabriel as like the Heisman favorite, but I think he's going to be able to drive the car. And I thought that's what it was. I wasn't like blown away by like, oh my, I can't believe, but it's like, yeah, that's going to work.
Yeah, no, I think it'll work. I mean, he'll have a cumulative case for the Heisman, I think, just because of the nature of that offense. I don't know, like he's a singular individual who's going to blow your socks off when you're watching him play, but I think his skills and his strengths mesh incredibly well with what Oregon wants to be offensively, which is like get the ball out fast, use the quarterback as a playmaker a little bit. And I do think like Dylan Gabriel's probably like twitchier than Bo Nix. Like things just maybe happen like a tick faster, I think, with Dylan Gabriel maybe than they did with Bo Nix. So it does. I expect the offense to more or less look exactly how it looked last year, like different faces, different names, but in terms of what they want to do, like Dylan Gabriel is perfectly equipped to do that with what they did last year with Bo Nix.
And he's a sixth-year starting quarterback. They were talking a lot in the broadcast. He's going to break potentially almost every quarterback record in the NCAA record book. The one he'll certainly break, assuming he doesn't get injured, is most starts, which will be breaking Bo Nix's all-time record. But if he has a good year, he has a shot at like passing yards all time. Everything else is owned by Case Keenum, and what he did at Houston, chucking it around for a bunch of years. So like that's what you're talking about with Dylan Gabriel, just like a really good college quarterback. He is twitchier. I don't think he'll be the 12th pick in the draft in a year.
Probably not. No.
So anyway, but like I think you saw what you wanted to see.
Yeah.
Second thing I want to talk about is their receiver room. And they have four guys. Again, they lost Troy Franklin, but Tez Johnson, Gary Bryant Jr., and Trayshawn Holden as guys who are back, and then adding Evan Stewart from Texas A&M, a former 5-star recruit. They're 4 deep. Stewart made some plays down the field. Johnson and Bryant are like little guys who were Tez Johnson's going to have 110 catches this year. Like he's just going to they're going to throw him little crossing routes and RPOs and bubble screens. He's going to have 14 catches a game. It might be 14 catches for 77 yards, but you're not going to stop it, and they're going to go to it constantly. But again, and we will have a discussion about this at some point about the North. Again, who has the best skill guys? And Ohio State would have something to say about a receiver room, but like those four in a receiver room, it's at least a case. And Evan Stewart showed some stuff down the field that was like, oh yeah, no, 5-star guy, that's real.
Yeah, and it's good. I think they needed a little bit of what Evan Stewart brings to the table, just like a guy who's kind of like going to dunk on you a little bit, like down the field.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of speed. They got guys who can get into space and really hurt you. They need like a, I don't know, it's third and long. We got to throw it up to somebody and have him go make a play. And I think like Evan Stewart is that kind of guy, and he showed it a little bit, like a very like just a glimpse of it in the spring game, but enough to make you think like, oh yeah, that's what we're looking for here. So no, their receiver talent is incredible. I love Tej Johnson. I think Tej Johnson, it's hard. Like, I don't know if a guy who does what Tej Johnson does, like, can be in the Blitnikoff conversation, because it's almost like you're a running back. It's just like they're giving you the handoff 10 yards out wide instead of giving it to you in the backfield. So I'll be curious to see how he's kind of received by people who are like, I don't know, evaluating the best receivers in college football this year. But in terms of production and big playability, like Tej Johnson is terrifying. And I think if you can pair him with an Evan Stewart down the field, get the run game going with Jordan James and even Dylan Gabriel using his legs, like I think that's going to provide Tej Johnson a ton of space.
Last thing is still offensive, because I did think, there was a lot of talk. I think they need to find some edge guys. They got Jabbar Muhammad from Washington as a top corner. I think they feel okay about the secondary. I think they feel okay about the defense, but I don't know. It wasn't like the defense necessarily popped. They do need to get after the passer a little bit, but the offense is what popped. And do they have the best tackle combo in the country in Josh Connerly Jr. and a Johnny Cornelius?
LSU might have something to say about that.
Yeah, and whoever else is down there. They're in the South. I don't know who it is.
Yeah. But in the conversation, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, it's so many, Michigan lost their offensive lineman. Penn State lost both their tackles, one to the first round, one to the third round. Like there's a lot of the, Oregon State had great tackles last year, and Taliese Fuaga went in the first round. Washington's offensive line blew up, right? But Oregon, that had good tackles last year, has them both back. And you can just see, again, they didn't get after the passer a ton. They went hard in this game. That's what they were physical, and they talked a lot about it. Like, there were some teams here, not just this weekend, but just some teams that chose to do it, that were like tackling. I actually thought, I think it was Evan Stewart. I thought somebody got hurt at one point. There was another guy, there was a real hit on the sideline that was like, that was actually too much. That was too physical for your own team spring game. They pushed it. They truly tackled. And Dan Lanning clearly wants that identity. But I thought you got a decent look at the stuff. And Josh Connerly just moves really well. I think, is projected as a first-round left tackle next year. And then Johnny Cornelius was a transfer, right? And was a big get last year, and now has been around the block. So it just is returning talent at both tackle spots always gets my attention. And it got my attention in this one.
Yeah, well, and Connerly's only a sophomore, right? Was he? Or no, he was 2022. I thought he was 23 recruiting class. But no, yeah, they're definitely the best tackle tandem in the North, right? And LSU is probably, maybe I'm forgetting somebody, so apologies if I am, but LSU is probably the only other program that can say they have a better tackle tandem than them. I think both, Will Campbell's going to be the second pick in the draft, and their other tackle is going to be a top 15 pick probably. So, but Cornelius and Connerly are really good. And Cornelius, I wondered whether or not Cornelius would actually translate was Rhode Island, right, where he came from when he transferred to Oregon, and a lot of other Power 5 teams were after him. And you always worry, this guy's really good at the FCS level. Will it actually work at this level? And it's yeah, it works in a major way. He played really well last year. And I think they're the two best. I think it's the best tandem in the North, and they might be the two best tackles in the Big Ten. I don't know. I'd have to do a little more research on that, but yeah, Oregon's got two really good ones.
So that's everything. I mean, and then Jordan James, your guy coming into spring at running back, replacing Bucking Irving. You saw it. You saw what you needed.
Yeah,
so and Terrence Ferguson at tight end made a bunch of big plays. So they have it everywhere on offense.
I thought, I think you're right, though. The offense is kind of what popped mostly for Oregon in this game. But I thought the defensive line was okay too in moments. I think it's hard. What's a sack in a spring game? It's hard to say, but they were credited with 5 sacks. They're looking for guys up there to be difference makers, right? We've talked about before that they play a lot of guys up front, but I think maybe they lost like the 5 of their top 7 snap count guys from last year, if that's the number that I'm remembering correctly. So they need some players to step up there. Like Ben Roberts was one that I thought popped a little bit. So it's that to me is what's kind of like going to like make or break things for Oregon is what they can get up front on their defensive line. And like they didn't wreck things in the spring game, certainly, but I thought there was enough pop there to like get you excited about what that group could become.
Mateo Uiagalelei at defensive tackle made a couple plays. They had a couple guys inside. They had like some goal line stuff where some guys got some penetration. Obviously, DJ's younger brother, who was a big time recruit. So, yeah, I don't think they're set like 1 through 11 on defense, locked in the way they are on offense. But they're one of the 4 best teams in the country, and I think the spring game showed that, and they got after it. They got after it pretty well. And I will say, like, they had Dylan Gabriel in the game, like in the fourth quarter, like throwing out of his own end zone in a 2-minute drive, and then they scored. They marched like 98 yards for a touchdown with Dylan Gabriel in the fourth quarter, and then like Dante Moore came back in with 40 seconds. Like they played their dudes to the end of the game, and they tackled the whole time. Obviously, they didn't hit the quarterbacks, but like, every single coach, every pregame interview that I've watched during the spring, every single coach, they're like, "What do you want out of this, coach?" And the number one thing, the first thing everybody says is, "We want to stay healthy. We want to get out of this game healthy."
Mm-hmm.
And but some teams and coaches sort of prioritize that in a different way. And Dan Lanning was like, let them hit each other. They'll be fine. And I'm not saying that's right, but makes for a better game. So like they got after it and they were trying to win. So I thought it was a good Oregon spring game, and Oregon fans saw what they needed to see. Would you let your guys hit? Yeah. Would you tackle Coach Landis in the spring game?
Yes, we would tackle. Yeah. If there's I think I said this last week. If there's anybody you don't want to get tackled, then don't play them, and then play the guys that you're okay with getting tackled, and please play a real football game. Or like have a party like we saw West Virginia do.
Rutgers had a boardwalk. Rutgers got after it though too.
Yeah, they did.
So Rutgers didn't play anybody, but then Rutgers followed the Landis thing. Nobody played.
So did Nebraska. Nebraska
didn't get within a mile of the field, but the guys who were out there were getting hit. All right, let's go to Nebraska second. It happened. It happened, right? I mean, like, we're not. It's what you want. We can be excited when we want things to happen and you think things are going to happen. Dylan Raiola looked like a dude, didn't he? He looked like a dude. Yes, I have a thing I want to say. I have a crazy thing I want to say.
Okay.
And I learned this lesson. I learned this lesson when I was on an internship when I was in college. And they sent me to cover a high school football game. And I came back from the high school football game, and like my lead was like comparing the high school football running back to Barry Sanders. And they were like, "Don't do that. Please don't compare high school players to the greatest NFL players." And then I did read something. I read something this weekend where like Greg Schiano said we're going to have Air Shiraka with the Rutgers offense in the spring game. And then I read a thing that like the lead of the story was talking about Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow. I was like, okay, like let's not do that. So like you can get out over your skis on some of this stuff, right? And I'm gonna make a ridiculous comparison with Dylan Raiola in a minute.
Okay,
but it's in a more responsible way because I've learned my lesson. But he looked good, brother. Come on.
Yeah, no, he looked good, and I felt bad since the Syracuse recap we did when I kind of poured a whole lot of cold water on Kyle McCord, which is like, I'm trying to be realistic, but I also get like, you go into a spring game with wanting to see a thing, and then like the player gives you that thing, like it's okay to be excited about it. So like Dylan Raiola delivered in the spring game. So like, yes, let's be excited about it.
I'm not sure what he finished. He was 15 of 21 for 239 and 2 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah. And also, Nebraska didn't play any of its defensive starters. But okay, go ahead, continue.
What? I thought you said you weren't going to do it. He looked. I thought he. But again, and the big thing again is the valid point of when you can't get hit, it's easy to look poised in the pocket.
Right.
But I thought he looked poised in the pocket, and I thought he had good touch on his throws. And I have talked about this before. There was a day I think it was at the beginning of the 2017 Ohio State fall practice, the first day we were out there. And Joe Burrow was just standing. And I just thought to myself, and I think I may have even said it to you, just the way he stands like Tom Brady. That's all. I didn't say he was Tom Brady. I said he stands like Tom Brady. Dylan Raiola walks and holds his arms like Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying he is Patrick Mahomes, but it feels like he's sort of doing a Patrick Mahomes impersonation as he like moves from the line of scrimmage to the next huddle. Like those choppy little steps and the way he holds his arms a certain way. That's all. I'm not saying he's Patrick. He's been compared to Patrick Mahomes 1,000 times and he's worked out with him, but he walks like him.
Patrick Mahomes kind of waddles.
Yes.
And he moves, and Dylan Raiola moves the exact same way. It did. I was watching the game. I was like, does Dylan Raiola stand in front of the mirror and practice looking like Patrick Mahomes? Because he moves exactly like him.
I would. I mean, I don't know. I stand in front of a mirror and try to sort of look like a slightly younger Will Ferrell, right? I mean, you do what you lean in where you can lean in. I thought he had good touch on some throws. He hit some stuff down the field. He had a really decisive rip down the seam to a guy. He had a pass where he threw out of his own end zone when Matt Rule was in the booth and kind of feathered it over the linebacker in front of the safety on the sideline. I just thought he looks ready and he's clearly going to be the guy. And I do think he's going to have some really good moments as a true freshman. And there's every reason for Nebraska fans to be excited, right? They don't have to pour water on anything.
No, they don't have to. I guess my Heinrich Haarberg also looked really good, which is just a product of, I think, what Nebraska wanted the spring game to be. They wanted to not play anybody on defense, and they wanted the quarterbacks to look good. So and that's great. That's an entertaining spring game. That's what a spring game should be. I just don't it leaves me wondering how much of the poise and the different types of throws we saw Dylan Raiola make in that environment is translatable to the fall when he's a true freshman seeing stuff for the first time, right? And that's probably an obvious thing to say. It's not me saying that I think Dylan Raiola is going to be a disaster. I'm just trying to say I don't know that environment that he was in is a realistic one, but it's a college football environment nonetheless, and he didn't look out of place. And he did look like the moment wasn't big for him at all. And he looked calm, and he can do a lot of things, man. And I think the one thing he can do also that we didn't see in the spring games, he can move. Mm-hmm. He's not he's not a 4-3 guy, but he can run a little bit too. And I think there's some playmaking stuff there that doesn't always come out in a spring game that Dylan Raiola will add to the arsenal once the games are real, and the defenses aren't his own. So again, be excited, man. Nebraska fans have been waiting a long time for a quarterback to be excited about, and Dylan Raiola is definitely one to be excited about. And he looked exactly how you'd want him to look in the spring game, which is great.
I did think, though, that sort of his variety of throws and just the way he throws it, Haarberg looked good, but I thought Raiola looked different.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Right. It's just
for sure. Yeah.
I also thought maybe at one point on the broadcast I heard them call Heinrich Haarberg Harrick Heinberg, which I thought was that's a Haarberg. Isaiah Nair, your guy, right? Wasn't this a guy you talked about? Texas and Wyoming transfer at receiver. I thought looked like a potential number one receiver in this game, which is, again, there's only so many things you can be on the lookout for when it may be hard to get a read on exactly what's happening on the offensive line and the defensive line. But I've felt myself in a couple games being like, oh, they found the guy. There's another receiver that popped, I thought, on Saturday. It was like, oh, they found the guy. But you liked him coming into spring, and I thought he showed why you liked him.
Yeah, I think they have a pretty good collection of skill there. With Malachi Coleman, and was it Ja'Cory Barney is the freshman receiver, right? Who had a really good spring game. Yeah, Ja'Cory Barney. How much is a true freshman going to play? I don't know, but they've been trying to improve that receiver unit for, it seems like, forever. And you're going to need it around a young quarterback with Dylan Raiola presumably being the starter. But Isaiah Nair was incredibly explosive at Wyoming, and then just like didn't have an opportunity to do a whole lot at Texas. But if you're going to, I think I might have said this at the time, like if you're going to get the version of Isaiah Nair from Wyoming and stick him in this Nebraska offense, like I think that opens up a lot for everybody. So it could be like a pretty sneaky good receiver core there at Nebraska as long as everyone stays healthy. But yeah, I thought Nair looked good. I think Coleman is explosive, and maybe Ja'Cory Barney is a guy that can actually help them and not just like a spring game star.
This is not my third thing, but I don't know if my hearing is going. I swear they had a walk-on running back score a touchdown, and I thought they said his name was Maurice Bazooka. And I was like, that's my new favorite player, Maurice Bazooka. And then I was looking through the roster under the B's, and I was like, he's not here. And it turns out his name is Maurice Mazzucca, but he's from Philly. He's from Simon Gratz High School in Philly. He played at Westchester for 4 years and transferred to Nebraska last year, and now is here for another year. And I would like us potentially to adopt Maurice Bazooka, if we can call him that, and have another Philly guy for you to talk about on this show.
I love that. I didn't know that Simon Gratz had football.
Yeah.
To be honest. That's Rasheed Wallace's high school.
Yeah. So I was so disappointed. Man, I was disappointed when his name wasn't Bazooka. Anyway, we could have him on the show. But I just thought overall my third thing was like, it feels like they have depth on both sides of the ball in the trenches. They like their defensive line. They have like 4 guys back with starting experience on the offensive line. It's hard to get a read on it, but I think it's just like they have it. And then, so there's just, again, I'm going to mention this with a couple teams. They had 60,000 there. I'm not going to mention that with most teams. They had 60,000 in the stands. There's just energy around Nebraska football. Congratulations to Nebraska football for being excited. And so the quarterback matters, the receivers matter, but I thought they do have some real guys up front. And that just allows, it's not just sizzle. It's not just excitement. There is some substance to it. So congratulations to Nebraska football for people being fired up, I think, justifiably.
Yeah, I think substance is a good word for it, right? Because I think we all know that there's been many off seasons over the last few years where we try to pump up Nebraska. I think just because like we all tend to agree that college football is better when Nebraska is relevant. So like we try to will that to happen, and they're not really ever talented enough to make it happen. They look like a team that should go to a bowl game. Like there's just like a better depth of talent there. There's a higher caliber of talent there, and like Dylan Raiola as a 5-star quarterback, I think brings a lot of gravitas to that. But it's not just him; it's both sides of the ball. It's I think almost every position. They just seem like they're more of a, I don't know, kind of like complete program than they have been in probably 5 or 6 years. So that's definitely a reason to be excited if you're a Nebraska fan.
We liked the over-under for Nebraska when we did our over-unders before spring ball, and there was nothing that you saw in the spring game that would move you off of that. So Another good spring for Nebraska. We come back, we're going to talk about my NFL draft stats about the North, and then we'll dive back into spring football recaps with Maryland and Colorado and West Virginia and Rutgers. We'll do that next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North to talk about tracking the NFL draft in a way that only we would do here on this show. And Bill, I want to describe the scene this weekend as the NFL draft is unfolding. So I'm tracking, and again, I explained this on the last show. We have our definition of what's a northern team, what's a southern team, and then what is a border / California, Nevada, Hawaii team. So there are more teams in the South, but you can't change geography, baby. So, but the reason, like, I don't want to have it only be North and South, so that like everything that's not North is South, because then the South would be getting credit for stuff that's not really South. Because in the end, we don't include USC here. USC is not North, but USC is also not South. So I don't want to be like, SEC power, man. Another number 1 draft pick for the South. No, I mean, they're in the Big Ten. So that's why I have that third distinction. So anyway, I'm tracking the entire NFL draft. I had talked about it a lot previously of like, hey, could they get to 10 Northern picks in the first 16 picks, which would have been a record since 1967, and they didn't. They got to 8. So there had been years of 9. It wasn't even like the best year in the last decade, but it was good. It was a good top 16 for the North. But then I was tracking the rest of everything. So in the first round, the North had 11 picks, the South had 18, and there were 3 California or border. So I was going through the whole thing, and I will tell you, Bill, after the 5th round, the North and the South were exactly tied in overall draft picks because the South won the first round. The second round was tied, but the North won the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. And I was like, it's happening. It's happening. The North is going to win the draft. And then the South won the 6th round, 28-10. And I was deflated. It ruined my Saturday. And I was like, oh, this 6th round. Oh, what a disaster for the North in my head. We weren't talking about the NFL Network. Daniel Jeremiah wasn't like, oh, this is an embarrassment for the North, right? Mel Kiper is not, just me. So in the end, the South wound up with 124 draft picks. The North had 104, and California/border schools had 29. But I thought to myself, 104, like the South won. But I thought 104, I bet you that's progress. I bet you that is something to talk about, Bill. It is the rise of the North. It is the North rising up to meet the challenge of this show. And I was so excited. I was tweeting it, and people were like, what's the context, Doug? And I was like, I'll get you that context. All right, Mike, let's show the context. They had the same draft they've had for 8 of the last 10 years. It is ridiculous. I'm sitting here in my house counting up Northern draft picks over the last decade. 2024, 104. 2023, 102. 2022, 101. 2021, 101. 2020, 102. 2019, 102. 2018, 81. And I was like, oh, good. It was a little drop off. So there's something to rise up from. 2017, 99. 2016, 102. 2015, 86. So 8 of the last 10 years, the North has had between 99 and 104 draft picks. This year was exactly the same as every year. There's nothing to learn from it.
How long did it take you to get over that once you realized that you did all that math for no reason?
I almost wanted to lie. I almost wanted to be like, I just wanted to find a year. I wanted to find 1971, the North had 53 draft picks. So I could have something to compare it to make this year seem better. And it's just, so I didn't do the South for every year, but I would guess it's around this. Like the South is probably like 120, sure. 125, 130. And the North is like 100. And then California and the border schools are like in the teens or the 20s. And that's it. So it's the end of the topic. But I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to be disingenuous. And I also didn't want to waste my math. If I'm going to do math, I'm going to share it.
Do you have in front of you what the totals were after the 3rd round?
Yes. After the 3rd round, the North was down 4.
Okay.
So the South had 7 more in the first round. The second round was tied. The second round was 15 to 2. And then the 3rd round was 17 for the North, 14 for the South, 5 for California border. So overall, the South had a 4-player edge after the 3rd round. They had a 3-player edge after the 4th round. They were even after the 5th round. And then they just, we'll be talking about it in 20 years from now. The disastrous 6th round for the North in the 2024 NFL draft. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
I was just hoping that the North could have bragging rights about hey, we had the most guys taken in the 3 rounds where you're drafting starters.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen.
No rights. But I'll tell you, when there's a run of North Dakota State, Albany, BYU, Minnesota, I am doing laps in my office. Yeah, 4 in a row. Let's go, Idaho. because we count. Now, to be fair, there was a Canada guy drafted,
Mm-hmm.
and I
There was
think
a guy
I
from
counted
England.
the England guy. I didn't count for the North. It's super North, but I just counted that in the border, California, England. I didn't think that was fair.
Oh,
But a
I would've
Canada
counted.
guy I counted, because if there's a guy from Mexico, I'd count that for the South, probably, right? So like that's the decisions you have to make when you're in charge of
Yeah.
Northern success. But yeah, we'll take Canada. But England's over an ocean. If you're over an ocean, you're not really of the North. Even though if we did a show about KOTN, every actor would be British, because that's how people make things feel Northern and
Yeah.
old and fancy.
But also, like, you're making a dangerous distinction there, because like if there's ever a football player from Iceland, like that guy's over the North.
Oh,
He's across the ocean.
we're going to Iceland too. Can you drive to Iceland? No, you can't. Can you?
No, you
Is there a
cannot.
bridge?
No.
No.
Oh, there should be. I wish there was. If there was, I'd go there.
But that's why I don't count Hawaii for the South. Big ocean. That's like another
A lot of
thing.
ocean.
A lot of ocean. All right. Can you picture me being downtrodden and sad, and just like my wife's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "The sick round, man. I just can't. I can't get past it."
You just throw your papers all over the place.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about like a Big Ten meeting days. I'm going to be like, PJ Fleck, don't you feel like the Big Ten needs to do better in the 6th round of the draft? All right, let's talk about the Maryland Terps and their spring game. No quarterback. Like, no, they have no idea who their quarterback's going to be. It is a 3-way competition with Billy Edwards, Cameron Edge, and MJ Morris. I've been assuming MJ Morris, the North Carolina State transfer, who I think is 4-2 as a starter in his career, I was assuming it was going to be him. A lot of talk on this spring game, clearly coming from the coaches, of like getting up to speed. Oh, when he gets comfortable, like he's not there yet. It's clear that like he just is not comfortable in the offense yet. And so he's behind. So like Billy Edwards started with the 1s, Cameron Edge started with the 2s, and then MJ Morris came in as the second quarterback with the 1s. They were sort of treating him as the 3rd string guy. They kept talking about this competition is going down to the last week before the season starts. That has to be what Mike Loxley and everybody on the staff, Josh Gaddis, are saying. But there was just like my takeaway was I didn't think anybody was great, and I don't think they know what's up.
Yeah, it was not a particularly impressive day for Maryland's quarterbacks. I don't even like the MJ Morris and Billy Edwards even combined for 100 yards passing. I think they've been like right on it, maybe. Which is like okay. I think it's okay. It's a little bit of a bummer, right? Because like we're talking about Dylan Raiola looks exactly how you want him to look in a spring game. And it's like you get a guy like MJ Morris to come to Maryland, like you want him to maybe wow you a little bit in the spring game. That certainly didn't happen. Although he did, there was one play where like he kind of got loose on a scramble and like ran through the middle of the defense. It's like, oh yeah, like that is probably in the end, but I think we'll separate him, and I think he's still going to be the starter. But it'll be an interesting decision, I think, for Mike Loxley between like the physical tools and upside of NJ Morris against like, I don't know, institutional knowledge of Billy Edwards, who's been there for a couple of years now, and Cam Edge, who's been there for a couple of years now. I would probably err on the side of the guy who's more toolsy, but I guess we'll see what Mike Loxley decides to do.
I can't imagine it won't be MJ Morris in the end, right?
It would be very surprising if it wasn't. Yeah.
To bring in a guy who's been a starter in the ACC in a portal world where everybody's getting portal quarterbacks, and then be like, oh, he hasn't been around. It's like, well, this is part of it in the portal world. Right. You've either got to bust it to get him up to speed, or accept the fact that he might not be all the way there, but you're going to play him anyway to help him get there. But Billy Edwards as a runner, Cam Edge as a pocket guy, they didn't seize the job in any real way either. So we talk about this a lot, Bill. When you have a competition that's uncertain, is it uncertain because you have multiple guys who can do it? Or is it uncertain because you kind of have nobody who can do it? And at the moment, and it's just for the moment, we know that. But at the moment at Maryland, it's like, oh, nobody who can do it.
Yeah. Which is going to be like, didn't you say like, this is going to be we didn't realize what we had with Talia year for Maryland? Yeah.
And it is one of those things like you get a guy who raises the floor but never hits the ceiling, and you start complaining about the ceiling, and then he leaves and you fall in a pit, and it's like, I missed that floor. So it's not there. Doesn't mean it won't get there, but it also feels like maybe this is going to be like a little different for Maryland. Maybe a defense first team this year. I think 7 or 8 starters back on defense. And the guy I want to talk about as the number 2 thing for Maryland is Jordan Phillips on the defensive line. I thought flashed in a big way. I mean, that was pretty clear. Played 1 year at Tennessee. This is now his 2nd year at Maryland. And he's a little bit of a bigger guy, like 6'2" or 6'3", I think, as a defensive tackle. They were talking about during the broadcast that like the coach is just saying like he's had got to play more compact. But I like that. Like you start with a defensive lineman with some range and maybe who's a little bit bigger. If you can get him to do that, you can really hit on something. And, a guy like a Tennessee transfer feels like a guy who could maybe be pretty impactful this year for Maryland on the defensive line.
Yeah, I thought he popped too. And I like Maryland. It started last year, and I think it's continuing into this year because they have some guys back. Like they've done a really good job, I think, of building up their defensive front. Like they've been a top 40 efficiency defense the last 2 years, and maybe we just don't think of a Mike Locksley program in those terms. So maybe like it's kind of like flown under the radar. And also part of it is too like they're in the Big Ten. I think that's always important to mention. Like there's not a lot of great offenses in the Big Ten, but they've been a pretty steady defensive team, or at least they were a pretty steady defensive team last year. I think they have enough back this year to be the same. And like up front, like I think it took a long time from like when Maryland went from like the ACC to the Big Ten for them to like look like they had a Big Ten defense. And now it kind of feels like they do. And like they lost like Jayshon Barham to Michigan, like former 5-star linebacker. Like that's a big loss. They don't have everybody back up front, but I think they have enough back up front to be pretty sturdy and probably be the thing that's going to carry this team. It's going to be like their defense and running the ball, I think, that are going to be carrying Maryland, which is not what we expect from Mike Locksley. And he said, like, we're still going to throw the ball. We're still going to have dynamic athletes. And watch the spring game. You think to yourself, like, I don't know. You might be running the ball and playing a little bit of defense. You might be East Coast Iowa this year.
There's a lot of East Coast Iowas this year. See, Kirk Ferentz is going to be like, see, everybody wants to be like us. We actually have a point about that to make in a second. But the last thing for Maryland, I thought, did you make note of Nolan Ray, who might be their number 2 running back? Kind of like a shot out of a cannon guy a little bit. Yes. Yeah.
Some real juice. Like, and I like Roman Hemby a lot. I've liked him the last few years, like very solid, steady Big Ten running back. But also like physical and like kind of like downhill in your face. So if you get a compliment to him that has a little more speed, a little more burst, can get out in the space, like not a bad 1-2 punch for Maryland. So no, I definitely took note of that.
Redshirt freshman from Michigan was like the I don't know, player of the year or something in Michigan. It was like a pretty successful high school career in Michigan, and just absolutely has some real speed. And so, maybe a chance at, the thunder and lightning kind of thing in the Maryland backfield. And again, if that's what you're going to be, like defense and running the ball after, I mean, there were times, right, in recent years, not just with Talia, but with some of the receivers that Maryland put out there that was like, man, like this team has a real chance to throw the ball. And I always felt like, again, from the ceiling discussion, it never quite got there, right, with what you maybe thought in the preseason they would be. But they're going to be a different kind of a team this year. So again, like they've got to get the quarterback thing worked out, but they always have some guys. Like it's a reminder, like they'll always have a couple guys that are NFL players and that kind of thing. So kind of Maryland being Maryland. And then we're going to talk about Brian Ferentz. So Brian Ferentz has been hired as an offensive analyst at Maryland. Not a full-time assistant. This is the kind of thing that was noted by many when it happened a couple days ago. I think mocked, maybe, by many. Brian Ferentz is qualified to be an offensive analyst in the Big Ten if he's not working for his dad. Like, I am fine with this. What do you think of this? He's not one of their 10 assistant coaches. He's a watch film in the back room guy that every program has 5 or 6 guys like this now. And with his resume, I think if his name was Brian Smith, he'd get, you're an offensive coordinator in the Big Ten? Yes, incredibly unsuccessful. But still, There's not a lot of Big Ten offensive coordinators sitting around waiting for jobs,
Yeah, no, I like that, especially like if the offense is going to kind of transform the way we were just talking about it, they're going to be more of a run oriented offense, and that Mike Loxley kind of said that. I don't know if he said it during the game or after the game. It's like Brian Ferentz is going to like kind of like help us retool the run game a little bit because we think we're going to have to be better at that and do that more. So it's like Brian Ferentz is a pretty good offensive line coach before he was given way too much responsibility at Iowa. So like if you're going to have him come in there and like give you some ideas on how to run the ball, give you some ideas on how to retool your offensive line, that's by the way replacing 2 really good tackles. I don't know. I like it. It's fine. Works for me. I think it could work out well for Maryland.
It's not that I think he should work at a fast food restaurant. He just shouldn't be in charge of a whole side of the ball for his dad at a top 25 program. That's all. So, but didn't you think like this was kind of a joke, right? And I was like, I'm not sure what the joke is.
Yeah, he's just become like a punching bag. So like anytime he does anything, like, oh, Brian Ferentz was spotted at the grocery store today. You're like, oh, that dummy. Yeah. So like I don't. Maybe this will help him get over that, but yeah, it definitely was met with jeers. But I don't know. It makes sense to me. Maryland, like Mike Loxley's like a passing guy. Let's bring in an offensive line and running guy and see if he can mesh the ideas together.
If I saw Brian Ferentz at the grocery store and he dropped his carton of eggs and they broke on the floor, I would think, well, everybody drops their eggs sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If I saw Brian Ferentz at the grocery store with his dad, and his dad handed him the carton of eggs, and then Brian Ferentz dropped the eggs, I'd be like, why is he still handing his son the eggs? That's the difference.
Yeah, right.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Lil Wayne. We're going to talk about Colorado. We're going to talk about West Virginia. I have a thing to say about West Virginia. We'll talk about Rutgers and its Ferris wheel next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. We're going to talk about the transfer portal on Thursday, the second show this week, Bill. We know it's unfolding. We know moves are being made in the North and otherwise. We know there are fans excited, fans upset, but we want it to chill out a little bit before we try to make some final determinations about what we think of the portal in this cycle. It closes on April 30th, which is what day? What day is April 30th? Is that Wednesday? I don't even know.
Today.
Is it today for real?
It is the day we are speaking to each other.
No. Today's the last day of April. Oh, what a lovely April it's been. So, but there's still, so it's like you can't go in after April 30th, but there's still paperwork being filed and there's still going to be news coming out. I hope we have a pretty good handle on it by Thursday. And then we will run through all of the meaningful moves in and out for Northern teams in the portal on Thursday. But we're just not going to try to piecemeal it and be like, oh, this happened 15 minutes ago. What does it mean? We'll take a holistic approach when it's over. So let's talk about Colorado and its spring game. I had this third. I'm going to take it first. I do think people are giving Colorado a little bit too much of a hard time with some stuff. I saw somebody make a big deal about the fact that at the spring game attendance was like half of last year. I think it was 45 or 47,000 last year. It was like 25 or 27,000 this year. It was snowing. It snowed. It was raining. It was sleeting.
It was miserable. I flew through Denver. Yeah. I flew through Denver on Saturday. It was miserable.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
You didn't go to the spring game, though? You didn't check in?
No. I just white-knuckled the landing because of the weather. And then thank God that we got down on the ground okay.
So Deion Sanders is wearing ski gloves, a parka, a cowboy hat, and sunglasses. And it was like, it's cold here. And he was saying, like, it was beautiful yesterday. It was beautiful yesterday. What happened? So, like, these people came out in ponchos and got sleeted on for 2 hours. But they were talking about the broadcast. These were like the people who were hanging out like at practice, like the day before. Terrell Owens, Warren Sapp, Pac-Man Jones, and Steve Francis, which I was like, why is basketball player Steve Francis, who's a graduate of Maryland, hanging out with Colorado football? But I don't know. It's kind of cool. And then they had a Lil Wayne concert after the spring game. And they had a talent show on Thursday night. And it sets Colorado up for mockery when these things happen and they don't win. But Colorado football, we just have to remember where it was before Deion Sanders got there and where it is now. So it doesn't excuse maybe their lack of high school recruiting. It doesn't excuse having your kids work the transfer portal for you. But I still think Colorado football fans are having a much better time than they were before Deion Sanders got there. And I think it's worth remembering that. Deion got on the mic and was talking to the crowd before the game, and it's like, that's Deion Sanders. That's Coach Prime. He's our coach. It's Colorado. It's not like he's doing this. Alabama didn't hire him. It's like, oh my gosh, it's Colorado, right? Can we remember that? And like, before we just go immediately like, oh man, Lil Wayne, I wish he could play offensive line for Colorado. It's like, there's Lil Wayne concert after the spring game. How cool is that? I don't know.
No, I thought it was cool. Warren Sapp is a GA at Colorado.
What?
He's a graduate assistant.
That means he's
I don't know
classes.
how.
That's awesome.
He is. He's a 51-year-old. He's a 51-year-old graduate assistant. Yeah.
Great. Can I tell my Warren Sapp story? I've told this Warren Sapp story before, but I haven't told it on this program, I believe. So when I was in the Philadelphia area, I covered the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia when Tampa Bay beat Philadelphia. Sorry. I have another good Philadelphia thing to talk about. People know Bill's from Philadelphia. I guess gave him the sad face. It was like, do you remember that, Bill? Do you remember 3 straight NFC Championship game losses? You remember that? You remember that? Yes, I remember it. And so I was in the Tampa Bay locker room after the game, like a crowded visitors locker room after the game, and just like trying to like figure out like, where is everybody? And Warren Sapp came out of the shower holding like a pink washcloth over his important bits and like brushed against me as he walked past me because the locker room was so crowded, like wet washcloth Warren Sapp. And I was just like, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I'm in your way. I'm sorry you can't get to your locker room. But it was like in that Along Came Polly when Philip Seymour Hoffman like goes up for they're playing the 2-on-2 and the guy goes up for the shot against Ben Stiller and his hairy chest like rubs sweaty face rubs against Ben Stiller's face. That was me with wet Warren Sapp. And it's not Warren Sapp's fault. It's my fault for being there. I'm sorry. It's like, what is this 26-year-old ding dong from a Delaware newspaper doing in front of my locker? I'm sorry. But I can't, like, every time I hear the name Warren Sapp, that's all that goes, that moment is what enters my mind. All right. So can we're okay with some Colorado juice? Like, winning's the best thing. Losing's the worst thing. Losing with juice is better than losing with no juice. Correct?
Yeah, I think so. It's a sizzle and substance conversation. I think similar to what we were talking about in Nebraska. Like people have grown a little tired, I think, of the sizzle. But there's no substance to it. There's some substance to it. They were a 1-win program, and now they're not.
Yeah.
Like they have much more juice as a program than they had before Deion got there. Do they have as much juice as, I don't know, the outsized coverage of it would lead you to believe? Perhaps not. But that's also like not 100% Colorado's fault either. It's because like websites know that Deion Sanders' name gets clicks, so they're going to keep writing about it.
And I will say, so, and again, this spring game wasn't on Fox. It was on the Pac-12 network. And as I said, I like subscribe to a thing to get the Pac-12 network, and I still don't really understand how the Pac-12 network works because there's like 6 different Pac-12 networks. There's like Pac-12 Mountain and Pac-12 North and Pac-12 West, I think. But the Colorado spring game started at 3 Eastern and the Oregon game started at 4 Eastern. And there are different Pac-12 network channels. But after halftime, they were like, we're now going to go to the Oregon spring game. If you want to watch the Colorado spring game, you can find it on, and they left. And it went to the Oregon game. And I was like, where can you find it? So I only watched the first half. I never found it. I don't know where it went. I don't know how to get it. I tried to record every single version of the Pac-12 network. So maybe people are excited. Haha, take that, Colorado. Warren Sapp. We're only going to show half your game. So I only saw half their game. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if Shedeur Sanders threw 14 touchdowns in the second half. I apologize. All right. So there's juice. Let's talk about their passing game as well, because we keep talking about these pass catchers. They think they have 4 pass catchers, right? That they really like. Jimmy Horn back, Travis Hunter, your guy and mine back, Omarion Miller back, right? And then LaJohntay Webster, 108 catches at Florida Atlantic last year. In there now, looks like a dude. We're having this conversation around a lot of Northern programs, Bill, but like multiple receivers they believe in. And I thought you could see that on Saturday.
As long as they can keep Shedeur upright, they are going to have one of the more dynamic passing attacks in college football. I mean, and that's probably maybe an obvious thing to say based on Shedeur's season last year, but like these receivers are legit. And LaJohntay Webster, like I don't even know if they needed to add him, but they did. So
yeah,
they have another guy there who's like a pretty explosive playmaker. I was looking it up just because I was kind of curious because I honestly didn't know much about him. He was 8th among G5 receivers in yards after the catch last year and 16th overall among all FBS receivers in yards after the catch, playing at FAU. Like, that guy's going to be a nightmare in Colorado's offense. He's going to, I don't know. I don't know if he can have a 1,000-yard receiver when you have like all those guys who are going to want the ball, but he's going to be a problem in that offense, I think. And to pair him with whatever, or not compare him, but combine him with everything else they have there in Shedeur, like as long as that offensive line holds up, like they're going to be pretty nasty.
I thought it was very cool. It was white jerseys versus black jerseys in that game. I think they call it the black versus gold game, but nobody wore gold. But the specialists, like the kicker and the punter, wore gray, and Travis Hunter wore gray because he went both ways. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. I thought it was cool. I know you love Travis Hunter. Everyone, like, it was like, yeah, everyone's going to be something, but he's different. And it's just like every moment, then no matter what side of the ball he's on, because he played both ways, it's just a reminder. I would be in favor of that during the game. Like in regular season games, if Travis Hunter just wears a different color jersey than anybody on either side, I think that would be fair.
Yeah, Travis, it was cool to see him wear the gray jersey. And it's like fun to watch Travis Hunter play football, but he's also very much in the category of like, I don't want that guy playing in the spring game. Please get him off the field.
Yeah.
We'll see you in September.
Yeah. They were doing thud though, right? Colorado was not tackling.
They were tackling a little bit. Yeah.
Were they?
They were doing some tackling.
All right. Last guy, Jordan Seaton, left tackle. And then Khalil Benson at right tackle, right? Khalil Benson's the Indiana transfer, right? And Jordan Seaton is a 5-star freshman. And the broadcasters were saying they talked to Dion and were like, so is Jordan Seaton, is he going to be the left tackle this year? And like Dion just looked at him like, what do you think he's going to, like, yes, of course. Like, and again, some people are like, well, he's a freshman. And Dion was like, yes, we're playing the 5-star left tackle, even though he's a true freshman. I thought he looked good. I thought it's like, okay, he's young, but you see it. And if those are their 2 tackles and that's the beginning of this entirely rebuilt offensive line, okay.
I thought he gave up a sack early. Jordan Seaton did, but then was pretty good after that. He is a massive human being. Like sometimes you'll get a tackle like a Paris Johnson who looks more like a basketball player playing offensive tackle, and then you get an offensive tackle who's like as big as a house, and that's what Jordan Seaton looks like to me. Like he's like just thick through the whole body and like and just like a really wide frame, but moves really well. Like was I thought moving people pretty well in the run game too. Like he'll have some struggles, I think, like in pass protection just because he's young and I'll have to figure some stuff out. But in terms of like movement, ability, and power, and what you have to look like to be a power 5 or power 4, I guess, left tackle, like he looked apart, I thought, as a true freshman.
And Shadur Sanders is a first-round quarterback, maybe the best quarterback in the North. And as you said, like if they can protect him at all, and they didn't sit on their hands after last year was a mess, if they can protect him at all, this is going to be a really good passing attack. So bad weather, otherwise a decent Colorado spring game, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too.
All right, let's talk Philly. You want to talk some more Philly? Let's talk West Virginia. And let's talk about Josiah Trotter, linebacker for West Virginia, was a huge recruit for them last year, hurt his leg in the preseason, like didn't play at all last year, and is here and has a chance, showed it in the spring game, as a chance to be a defensive difference maker for West Virginia this year. On the same weekend where his older brother, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, where their father played. And if you want to stop and take a break to collect yourself as we talk about the Trotter family in Philadelphia, feel free to do so.
I love the Axeman. Jeremiah Trotter was one of my favorite players when I was a kid. And like there were some people who were like criticizing the Eagles, I think, for like making a sentimental pick when they picked Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Because I guess there's some people who wonder, like, is he actually gonna be that good of a pro? I don't care, man. They took Jeremiah Trotter Jr. They'd take him in the first round for all I care. I thought it was awesome. And like people are like crying on the phone when they're talking to him and like telling him that the Eagles are picking him. I thought it was great. And now I'm really excited for the Eagles to pick Josiah Trotter in like 3 years. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. But this is a big deal. He had like a really nice offer list. And it felt like people thought maybe he would be able to come in and contribute right away last year. Then he got hurt. But now with that whole year of experience under him, this is the kind of thing, right? When we want to talk about West Virginia as a possible playoff team, this is the kind of thing that needs to happen, because there are things in place at West Virginia. But what's in place is not enough. What's in place gives them a shot, and then you need to find this and that. And we had talked about some transfers they got in the secondary on defense and that kind of thing. It's one of those crazy things, like Beanie Bishop, who was their great transfer last year, played great, was an All-American, didn't get drafted. Like that's like, it's a very difficult thing sometimes in the NFL draft when like great college players just don't get picked. But like this is the kind of thing, right? We brought this guy in, he got hurt, we missed him all year, and it's like, oh, by the way, is he going to make the third down play against Utah in the Big 12 title game that gets West Virginia into the playoff? You need a couple guys like that. And at places like Oregon and Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia, like you have 9 guys who can make plays like that. West Virginia doesn't, and that's okay. You don't have to have 9, but you have to have a couple, which is why I think this has a chance to be I think he could be one of the most impactful defensive players in the North.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's potential to just like elevate everything, right? Because he's just got like a playmaking element to him. That was the reason we did the trade show. I think I concocted a trade where like West Virginia was trading Josiah Trotter because I thought like in that hypothetical situation, like teams would see the upside there and like find him to be a really enticing player to trade for, even though he didn't do anything last year. So like, obviously you can't trade in college football, so he is still at West Virginia, which is great for them. I thought he really flashed, like, and actually I always like make an extra note of linebackers when they flash in spring games, because I really think like more often than not spring games aren't set up for like linebackers or running backs or like anyone kind of involved in the game in that way to like really kind of stand out in a way that's meaningful. So when it happens, I'm like, oh, that feels like something. That feels like something that's going to show up in the fall. So, and I think it will for Josiah Trotter when West Virginia starts playing games in August.
I don't remember everything from that trade show. Did you trade him to Temple? Did you just want to get Josiah Trotter back to Philly?
I would like to. That's my dream scenario, is to just keep because Philly high school football has gotten a lot better over the last like 10 years. Mostly because of the high school where Josiah Trotter went, St. Joe's Prep. But it's my dream. It's my dream to go to. I want to be the personnel director at Temple and just build the whole thing out of Philly guys.
Oh no! I mean, that'd be great, but You'd still have to do this show. It'd be a little weird. You'd
Do
be like, the
both.
show would be like 60% temple to
Yeah.
get you to agree to still do both jobs.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Garrett Green as the number 2 thing for West Virginia.
Mhm.
And I think he's an NFL quarterback. Like I can't.
Little, you don't worry about the size. You don't, little guy.
No, it's like if so like this last NFL draft, there were six first round quarterbacks, and then there wasn't another quarterback drafted to like the 5th round, like Spencer Rattler. And like, I think it can at least be that. And I don't know, man. He moves and he throws it. And I'm going to wind up thinking like, okay, there are 17 All-American quarterbacks in the North based off the spring games where they were not allowed to be touched. But I just thought it looked, I mean, it just looked like you want it to look. That guy's going to beat people this year. He just has the right package.
Yeah.
There's enough, because even though there's a lot of quarterbacks who are looking good, there's just enough quarterbacks we've also seen where it's like, well, this guy can move, but I don't know about his throwing. This guy can throw, but I don't know about his movement. And I just think Garrett Green has both. And I just was like even more enamored with him after the spring game.
I think my favorite part of the West Virginia spring game was the few times where like Garrett Green scrambled and they whistled him down dead and he like threw his hands up in the air like he wants to play real football. He was mad that they weren't letting anybody touch him. But no, I mean, I don't know about the NFL thing only because he's 5'11". But like Bryce Young's like 5'8" and he was the first pick in the draft. So what do I know? But no, he's got the ball really jumps off of Garrett Green's hand in a way that is like when like if you don't know anything about him or you don't watch him a lot, like it really catches you off guard. Like, oh, okay. And then he can run like a madman. So like he's got everything you want.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I just think if he was at Penn State or if he had transferred to Michigan, you know what I mean? Like, I think people be going nuts. So, I mean, we probably, I think as soon as we ranked him in Northern quarterbacks, we were like too low. Like the moment we did the show, we're like, well, here's our list. Here's our wrong list because Garrett Green's too low. And the ball, you're exactly right. The ball jumps off his hands. And then he has great movement. And that is the one thing when you're 5'11", you better be able to get outside the pocket and do some stuff. And like the one thing I loved Bryce Young's poise in the pocket in college, but in the NFL, it maybe doesn't matter how poised you are if you're 5'9". Yeah. Whereas Garrett Green is going to get out and make throws on the move. And again, just jumps off his hand. Okay. Last thing about West Virginia, I just thought, again, we'll do a trend show, which programs are trending up and trending down. I don't know if we can arrive at a point where like 95% of Northern programs are trending up, but this is absolutely another program that's trending up that did not think they were headed this way. People coming a year ago, people were waiting for Neil Brown to be fired. And now they did. You had mentioned trying to read some stuff on the West Virginia spring game. And it was like all anybody talked about was the jersey reveals. They did so many jersey reveals. They did 3 separate jersey reveals during the course of the game. And there was so much discussion about shoulder stripes, the flying WVU logo on the shoulders, which people are jacked about, and the Don Nehlen stripe on the pants. And when I was a young college football writer, I was like, my God, people get excited about uniform stripes. What is the deal? And now I've learned that people get excited about uniform stripes. And people like, and it does feel like it is, I think, a signifier of the legitimate substantive excitement around West Virginia football that is enhanced by a uniform stripe. When you only have uniform stripes, it's like, okay. But when you have Garrett Green and Josiah Trotter and like a real team, and then you add a stripe, it's like, let's go. It's a racing stripe. It's like flames on the side of your car. You don't want to put flames on the side of a Chevy Cruze, but if you're putting flames on the side of a Corvette, then it's like, okay, we'll put flames on that. So like, there was good energy. Congratulations to West Virginia. There's real There's sizzle. Again, we're talking about it again. There was real sizzle with some stuff in the spring game, but there's actually substance too.
Yeah. I like the white on white uniforms. They're pretty clean.
Yeah.
What did you think of like the whole presentation there? Because they played like a little bit of football. They didn't tackle, but then they had like a kickoff competition. They had like the offensive linemen and defensive linemen like running one-on-one routes against each other.
Yeah.
Pat White and Pat McAfee were like the coaches. Like they seemed like they made like a little bit of a party of it.
Good. Like
Yeah.
all for it. Were they the one that was like they were having like other players? They had like weird scoring that like the best dressed team got 3 points before the game started. Then they were having like offensive linemen try to throw balls into a net at halftime. And again, that's the carnival thing we talk about. It's like maybe come out and tackle each other hard or have a carnival. So I thought again, it would feel hollow if they were coming off a 2-10 season. It's like, oh, congratulations on scoring 3 points for wearing a nice sports coat to the game.
Yeah.
But when you're a real team, it's like, oh, cool, this is fun. So I thought it was all good and emblematic. And again, they had somebody from the athletic department come on the broadcast and say, like, listen, like it's been a tough 18 months. And mostly the tough 18 months is the whole Bob Huggins thing. It's like, hey, yeah. And then a bad basketball season. They got a new basketball coach. But this is a nice reward for West Virginia fans. It's going to be a good year.
I think so.
Clean look. Look good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last one's Rutgers. Quarterback competition for Rutgers, similar to Maryland, except opposite, that I thought both quarterbacks, Ethan Kaliakmanis and Gavin Wimsatt, both looked good, pretty good in the way they play. And I don't know what Rutgers is going to do at quarterback. But compared to the Maryland quarterback competition, it felt like to me coming out of this, the Rutgers quarterback competition is in a better place.
I agree with that assessment. I thought Ethan Kaliakmanis like started off shaky, but then settled in pretty well. He threw a touchdown pass to his brother. His second touchdown pass was to Naseem Brantley, who I think we should talk about in a second. But it was like far hash to the back corner of the end zone, like in a bucket over the shoulder. And I was watching the play and I just went, whoa, I don't think I've ever seen a Rutgers quarterback do that before. And it's like, I have been soured on Nathan Kaliakmanis, like mostly because of the way that Minnesota like pumped him up last year and then he was bad. Yeah. But there's definitely something there, right? There's like, it's maybe not a 10 out of 10, but like when he syncs everything up, like he can really throw the football. Which I think Rutgers desperately needs. And then Gavin Wimsatt runs like a madman. Can't throw. I don't think he can throw. But he can run like a madman. And I think they need to find a way to use both of them. That was like my biggest takeaway from watching them both play is like, this looks okay. They both have different strengths. I really hope they use both of them because I think there's a compelling offense there if you do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Kaliakmanis is going to have to throw it significantly better than Wimsatt to like be the full guy, because Wimsatt, as you said, 5 carries, 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just a real threat. Kaliakmanis, I think, like on a second throw was almost a pick six. It was like, okay, he threw some interceptions at Minnesota last year, and it's like if you're going to throw interceptions, then they're going to play Wimsatt,
right?
But the arm, he's the better thrower, and so 10 of 17 for 142, I think, like something there. And I didn't realize. Rutgers is a great brother place.
Oh yeah.
The Melton brothers on the broadcast, because one had just got drafted. The McCourty brothers are like the defining Rutgers football players probably of the last 15 years. And now the Kaliakmanis brothers, because his brother Dino also transferred from Minnesota with him. And so that was nice. That was nice to throw a touchdown pass to your brother. But Wimsatt has to stay involved. Whether it's on third down, whether it's red zone, whether it's a drive, whether it's you put him in on 2nd and 7 just to knock the defense back on its heels. There are times when doing that is only confusing, but I agree with you that this is a situation where that's how Rutgers maximizes its offense, is by trying to find a way to legitimately, maybe not 50-50, but also I don't think 90-10. I think like
No.
75-25. And
Yeah.
in that world, it's probably because you never put in the thrower. You don't start the runner and play him 75% of the time and be like, oh, it's 3rd and 9. Let's put the thrower in. That's just not how it works. I mean, unless they want to. Could that work, do you think?
I don't think so. That feels a little tricky. But I want to see. If I don't see sometime this season a backfield where Ethan Kaliak-Manis is in the shotgun, and to his right is Kyle Monungai, and to his left is Gavin Wimsatt, I'm going to scream. I'm going to go to Piscataway.
Don't get me started on playing 2 quarterbacks every snap. Don't get me started. Are they 2 your best 11? Probably.
Yeah.
So 2 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, 2 quarterbacks.
2 quarterbacks.
That's our base offense. Come on, Greg. Nassim Brantley, you want to talk about him, was not allowed to play last season by the NCAA. Had played 4 years at Sacred Heart, I think, and then 1 year at Western Illinois, and then had a goofy thing, and Greg Schiano was like super mad. I think his quote was, "You could fry an egg on my head with how mad I am," which is like, I don't.
But I think that's like his resting disposition too. Like, I don't know if that really landed the way he wanted it to.
Like Greg, it's like, Greg Schiano's like sitting on his couch at home eating popcorn, watching a Pixar movie. You just walk up and crack an egg on his head. It's like, okay, dude, number 1 receiver. Like,
yes,
and so he's now 7 years out of high school, and with what we've talked about with the Rutgers defense, which is we think it could be like a top 20 defense in the country, and with what they did, adding Kaliak-Manis in the portal, and with Kyle Monungai staying at Rutgers for this year, probably worked out for the best that he wasn't allowed to play last year, because it looks like they have a true number 1 receiver this year as a result.
Yeah, when's the last time you said that about Rutgers? I don't. They've had some nice skill guys, like here and there, never really the quarterback to get them the ball. But no, Brantley looks like a real number 1 for them. I think he was like a borderline 1,000-yard receiver, I think, in his 1 year at Western Illinois. And I'm sure, like you said, like last year was incredibly frustrating for everybody that wasn't able to play, but it does feel like it's going to work out really well for Rutgers. Like it seems like if he was there last year, it wouldn't have really synced up in a way that was all that meaningful. But now with everything they have coming back, like it actually feels almost like kismet timing that this worked out for them.
Yeah. Thanks, NCAA.
Yeah.
Great
they were
job.
Just looking out for you. Yeah. Yeah. That's all it was.
So I thought it was physical. They tackled. I thought it was physical. I thought you could see the sense of what they want to be. As you mentioned, they didn't really play their defensive guys, right? Like it was like Greg Schiano did what you said, is tackle and don't play anybody that matters. Yeah. So to come away with like, hey, we thought their defense was going to be great, and now we really think it's going to be great because of this or this or this from the spring game, just isn't there. But I just liked happy Greg Schiano. You talk about cracking an egg on his head, but that man was smiling for 2 hours. They put a boardwalk in the end zone. They have a Ferris wheel. They've been doing that a couple years for the spring game. They jersey it up. Then they come out and they hit, and you can hear it, and they're doing some stuff. And now he's got more at quarterback. His receipt, it felt like happy Schiano, happy program. And again, congratulations to Rutgers fans on a real reason to be enthusiastic about your football program. And that was the third thing for me, just coming out of spring, good for Rutgers.
Yeah, it just feels like I don't, what is Rutgers in the new Big Ten? Like I don't know. But I think everything you wanted this to become, or like the direction you wanted this to move in when you brought Greg Schiano back, I think is coming to fruition a little bit. Like it's not complete, but it's definitely headed in the right direction. So there's multiple reasons, I think, to be really excited about Rutgers football. And this felt like a little bit of a celebration of that. Just like, everybody come together, have a good time. I like jersey it up. I do appreciate that. Lean into it. We're close. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to Jersey State. It's going to happen.
Yes.
Day. Yeah.
And even if it's an alternate jersey, that would be the first step.
Yeah.
Just one game where they wear Jersey State on the jersey. And then the university president is there and is like, That looks pretty good. So they showed the schedule. We know this. No Ohio State, no Penn State, no Michigan.
That's right.
9 Big Ten games. It's 3 former East teams. It's the other 3, which is Maryland, Michigan State, and Indiana, which is the 3 you'd want to play. It's 3 former West teams, and then they're playing 3 out of the 4 new teams, including USC and Oregon. So it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but what a relief. So like Maryland only plays Penn State. Maryland doesn't play Ohio State or Michigan. They play Penn State in the season finale. But for Rutgers to have to play none of those 3, like Oregon's probably going to boat race them, but at least it's a different boat.
That's one way to look at it, I guess.
Like,
yeah.
You just sick of pounding your head against the Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan wall, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it did feel like 2 things happened with the Big Ten rework schedule. One, like rewarded Maryland and Rutgers for like years of getting their heads bashed in by the Big Ten East powers, and then punished Michigan for years of just having like an embarrassingly easy schedule.
Oh yeah. Michigan's playing like 9 top 25 teams. So good energy for Rutgers, which again, like I think for a fan base to come out of spring feeling good instead of worried is a successful spring, and not just because of jersey stripes or whatever, but not just because of a Ferris wheel, because of real stuff. So I think Rutgers met that threshold. All right, that'll do it for this Spring Game React Part 3. It's the 3rd time we've done this. We'll do it one more time at the beginning of next week. Washington still has a spring game left to play on Friday night. And then there's a bunch of teams. BYU played at spring game in March, and we just never got to it. So we'll talk about them next week. And then Minnesota, Northwestern, and Wisconsin didn't really play spring games. Wisconsin did like have a pretty full like final spring practice this past week. Just wasn't like in a stadium because they're redoing their turf and that kind of thing. But we want to make sure we hit at least to some degree a spring wrap on all of our Northern teams. So expect that next week. We want to do trend lines. We want to do who has the top foursomes. I want to do 2025 quarterbacks, how it looks like in the North. So we have a lot of stuff coming. But Thursday, we're going to do the portal. And we're going to talk about who's in, who's out in the North, and who's going to make the biggest impact and what the portal has meant in this cycle. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for making us look good and sound good. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.